Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of Overwatch.
The two to the fight will not be denied.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special episode. It happens once a year. It might happen more this year because I'm actually down to do more updated ones, but whatever. Anyways, it's our Power Rankings episode. This is another one specifically for Made in Esports. So again, if you're a fan of the Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, make sure to hit like, subscribe, follow the channel. We're going to do, again, one Call of Duty, one Overwatch content a month. But for this one, it's the Overwatch League Power Rankings. It starts in a day, I believe. Anyways, give us your thoughts down below. We got some spicy takes in here. You know I'm a fan of hot takes. There might be potentially some Toronto bias in here. We will see. Anyways, let us know what our favorite hot take was and what you think our worst hot take was.
Ignore every other power rankings. This is the one.
Yeah, this is the best one
to be watching.
This is by far and away, as you can see, the number one power rankings out there. And if you disagree, it's probably because, well, it's just pretty subjective. Let's be real. Nobody really fucking knows what's going to happen. We're just doing our best to predict this stuff from what we've heard about scrims, as well as just how we think the rosters look on paper. So with that out of the way, let's just jump into things. I think we should start with the APAC, right? A little bit of SEO going in here, trying to make people watch a little bit longer. We'll do the NA one a little bit later on. Before the APAC ones, starting off very, very, very cold. And that
hold up. Let me just explain my methodology to this first.
Okay.
I did stuff a little different. So obviously everybody wants to gut check all their work and what they do. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get an understanding of how the community rates every single team. So what I actually did is I went to Reddit, Twitter, found all the power rankings of all the the top guys, best posts, and I actually averaged them all out, and then also took their standard deviation to see what the variance is for all of these teams. And you actually had some really, really good, really cool results. And it actually is really great for also making tier breaks too. I would have like 3 or 4 teams that once averaged out, actually are within a point or two of each other. So, if you have an average of like 11, you'd have an average of 11.2, 11.4, 11.6, and then you have a break, quote unquote, a tier break, and you'd have something averaging at 16. So it's actually pretty cool to get that. I'll kind of dibble dabble and talk a little bit more about that throughout this power ranking.
And we can again tweet out like the combined one. The reason I didn't want to do a combined one was because, one, I feel like it's just too hard. We had an entire year last year where like almost none of the teams played. Like, how do I really project this like Hunters lineup in relation to the Atlanta Reign lineup? Like, I felt like I was like, I'm just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks here. So I kind of want to be a little bit better with this. I was like, let's split up. We'll do APAC, we'll do NA, and then maybe we'll throw a combine out there on Twitter and see what people think. But now that we've gotten, again, how we thought about these power rankings, I kind of just went off of, like, again, what I've heard behind the scenes, as well as just what I personally feel about the rosters and how much of a Canadian I am. So with that out of the way, let's go to the last one sort of there in APAC, and this is, again, the LA Valiant.
I mean, is that... here's the thing. LA Valiant, everybody's rated at 20th. There's not a single power rankings that I saw that rated them higher than 20. I feel like everybody's rating them 20th because they were a shit show for a long time. I mean, they are now a shit show, and no one knows the players. But I'm going to say this right now. We could be wrong. These players could be good.
I agree. Okay, this was, again, combined. I think you can make an argument for like this LA Valiant roster in relation to like Paris or London, or maybe not London, but like, Vancouver, for instance. Like, could you actually argue LA is ahead of Vancouver? Maybe. But one, I think everybody in this whole community together is sort of like unanimously like, screw the Valiant. So we're putting them last, as well as just, but this is APAC, right? Like, I actually think the next worst team is significantly better than this team. So you're right. There's some interesting names on here who potentially could perform. I don't want to write off anybody. I actually think the Chinese Overwatch scene has some like really hidden gems in there and some really good talent. I think this roster is scuffed. It was so last minute. So personally, I hope they finish last, and I have no problem saying that. Out of the way, let's just move on. Let's jump right to the next one. This is where things get a little bit interesting. This is going to be the Guangzhou Charge. This is, again, a very clear tier break where the Charge are an actual like good team. I feel like there's just some question marks here. And to be frank, I like APAC as a roster, or as a region, sorry. Somebody's got to be second last. And I think this is one of those instances where the only teams I think you really put here are either like the Charge, the Hunters, or the Spark. I'm not going to bet this entire thing on Scrimbucks, which is why the Spark isn't in this roster. I think on paper they still have a better roster than this. This is still a really good team, right? They have a really good tank line in Rio and Krong. They have a really interesting DPS lineup with some really high upside and McKaylee, Choi, Eileen. They have some really potential high upside here, but there's some risk involved. The support line, I'm a little bit more concerned about.
I mean, really? Like, I feel like Kriv was a pretty big shining part of Toronto Defiant last year.
Was he, though? Like, was he?
He really was. We talked about him a bunch. Here's the one thing I like about APAC, guys. Conversely to NA, is that they actually, in my understanding, the skill gap in between the best and worst team is a lot tighter than it is for NA. I think that's true. I feel like
I think that you mean no. I think there's a big gap between the Charge and the Valiant, if that's what you're saying. Or do you mean the skill gap between like the best teams and the worst teams, like tier wise?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, not
the difference between, let's say, our number one, which we'll reveal in a second, and Valiant is a little bit closer than our number one in NA.
Yeah,
and
sure.
our last
more teams as well. But yeah, I agree.
Especially
I think good like number two. Yeah,
I like Kriv.
No, I think Kriv was good for Toronto last year. I think he had his moments. I just think that there's a potential that he's a little bit overrated. I think he looks best far and away on his Ana. I think some of his other heroes are a little bit lackluster. And I think that there was definitely moments where he was over-aggressive and a little bit caught out of position last year. And could that be because he was trying to do too much because that roster was struggling? Very well. This could easily be a bounce-back year for Kriv. And I hope he does. I think he's actually a fucking wonderful personality. Like, I miss having him on the Toronto Defiant. He's one of my favorite players. I would have liked to have seen, maybe him in our second flex support just because I'm a fan of his. But I think objectively speaking, like, I don't know, if he's going to be able to really compare with some of the top tier flex supports in APAC. I think that's a legitimate concern.
All right. I hear that. So let's move on to the next one then. We had Chengdu, Hunters.
Yeah, the Hunters is this one, yeah.
It's crazy how much, I mean, I got to give this to them purely off of depth. Like, they have so many damn players that, you're bound to hit a nail in the head at one point, right?
Well, this is the other thing. Is like, man, this is the problem with doing these power rankings. Like, you'll see this with NA. There is a very clear, I think, group of teams here that you could argue. You could put Hunters second last. You could put the Spark where the Hunters are. Like, really, at this point, I'm, picking at straws here. I think this team could easily overperform, where I have them on the rankings. I think Gaga is insane. Like, Gaga is a really, really good main tank. They finally fixed that main tank issue. 1987 is supposed to be, an elite, flex support player. This DPS lineup's insane. This team has high potential. The problem is, Chengdu Hunters have always seemed to have, talent on paper, but they can never really figure it out. Are they going to try to force Aimon, for instance, in situations where they really shouldn't? We'll see. I think their off-tank has some question marks. But Chris, yeah, you're right, man. You can take it with the depth because they got a lot of players in this roster.
I mean, we all have those consistent guys Late Young, Jinmu, Elsa. They aren't people that necessarily are breaking barriers, but they're people who just run it consistently. So I mean, if we hit some nails in the head with 1987 and Gaga, then they're gonna be decent. That's for sure.
For sure. They also have a high ceiling. This is the problem. There's some teams in here that have high ceilings and also debatably low floors. If Hunters just go back into the Hunter zone, I could see this being an issue. I don't think they will. I know Platchat, they're kind of mean about them being in the Hunter zone. I think this team will be really good. If this is again a combined list, they would be pretty high up there in relation to the NA teams, I think. Yeah. It's just really hard to tell. It's really hard.
Yeah, you're totally right about that. I mean, so let's take a quick second and hop on and chat a little bit more about the Hanzo Spark now. I think that's our next one after that. So I feel like this is similar to Chengdu Hunters. They do have a lot of depth. I just feel like their stand-up players, in my mind, are a little bit better on paper for me. I mean, I'm thinking Gushue, Siemens-Su, Architect. I feel like those guys
I don't know if Siemens-Su's going to see any play time, but I agree with the first two, yeah.
I don't know. It's not too bad. Architect's not bad as
well. No, Architect's really good. Yeah, Siemens-Su, I don't know if we'll see play, but I think Shy Architect, I think, is who I'm really looking for, and then Godspeed's pretty good.
I'm gonna see it. Okay.
Yeah, Siemens was maybe Zarya. I don't know. Anyways, we'll see. I hope he does well in the league. You know what I mean? There's that cool Twitter account that's a big fan of his. In a 2-2-2 meta, I don't know. I don't think we'll see him, especially when his competition is Shy, Godspeed, and Architect. I think those are clearly the big three. I think the biggest thing about Hangzhou Spark is this tank line's insane. They have two. They have two of the best tank lines in the league, I think. I think I've heard really, really good things about. I can't even pronounce that guy's name. I'm not even gonna try. Yeah, I'm sorry. His real name's it's Lee. So, he's really, really good. Right, comes from a really good, Korean contenders team there, and I've heard I think Rush tweet out he's gonna be the best tank in the world at one point. Benar is a really, really good off tank. That could be elite. But I also look at their actual, what I think is going to be their tank line, which is Gushue and Liege. I watched a lot of Liege when I was going back there and sort of looking at that like Korean gauntlet. And man, Liege is actually insane. Gushue Liege, like my hot take would be this is going to be the best tank line in APAC. Like I seriously think this is going to be the best tank line in APAC. How will they work with the rest of their team? Because they do have that communication issues. I'm not too sure. But I've been a Gushue, massive Gushue fan ever since, he really popped off during the World Cup for China in like 2018, was it? Whatever. And now he finally has a partner, I think, who speaks the same language, and that's like really crucial for your tank line. Liege has insane mechanical skill. Gushue Liege is like, yeah, I think they could be the best tank line in APAC. So I'm really excited to see this team work. I know that their scrim results have not been there. The communication is potentially lacking. But I'm not going to buy too much. In my opinion, they have too much talent on paper to not at least somewhat figure this out. So I knocked them a little bit lower than maybe where I would have had them had the scrim bucks not been so poor. But this team still got a really high ceiling, and I love the tank line. So,
yeah, exactly. Next up, NYXL, and I feel like there is not necessarily a massive tier break from Spark and NYXL, but I just really, really like what NYXL has to offer. I mean, we have really one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most, elite DPS out there who's multifunctional, Ivy. Like he just does so much. Like
I love
really
Ivy.
Great last year. I love seeing Yakpong come back into the game.
Yeah.
This guy was actually a really, really great tank on Toronto Defiant, but just hearing some stuff in the background, he did get a little bit mixed up by some of the other people on his roster, and he had to drop back down. He's making a comeback rally, and he's making a comeback rally for a reason. Yeah. And obviously Jonak. I mean, look at Jonak, hasn't been Mr. MVP since, season 1. But just because you're not MVP doesn't mean you're not absolutely cracked, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I also think Bianca is really, really underrated, and I think Feather has insane potential as well. Like, it's really crazy to me that they somehow managed to get Ivy and Feather. And Guangbang. Yeah, no, this team is super, super elite on like all different levels. I'm a big Yakpong fan. I think that, yeah, you look back at stage 1, he actually looked really, really good. It was a goat spin. It was a little bit weird. He was also 18. It was his first year, but like he had really high potential. He was one of the best Winstons to come out of that like class of rookies. That was 2 years ago. He comes back into Korean contenders. He has a bounce back year, performs really well. I'm really excited to see him alongside Bianca again, hopefully in a better environment than Defiant Season 1. I think Ivy is the most underrated player in the league. I was a huge Ivy fan when he was on Toronto Defiant. He goes to Philadelphia Fusion, obviously performs. Bianca's extremely underrated. Feather, Guangbang are like amazing talents. The only really question mark in my opinion is Friday as their only main support. But obviously he gets on this team for a reason, and like clearly they would have scouted him correctly. So I think this team has like some really high upside. Again, yeah, you're right, Jonak being the team captain. This is a team that like obviously the Scrimbucks have them placing high, but I don't want to buy just in the Scrimbucks. Like I don't like doing that. But they're actually really good on paper. So that's why I start to believe the Scrimbucks when I start to see it, because it doesn't surprise me that they're performing the way they're performing.
Yeah, I 10 out of 10 agree with that. Now we're getting to a little more fun range. I mean, we've got Shanghai, Philly, Seoul. I feel like we're now looking in between Philly and Seoul, and I think we agreed on Philly being lower than Seoul. I think lots of that's purely based on the risk associated with playing on Ping.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to Philadelphia,
100%.
Realistically, you could debate that they got a little worse because they lost to a couple big guys, but like I love the addition of like people like Shockwave. Like, I just want to really Rascal fucking Carpy Shockwave, and then you have EQO, and you're like, oh man, EQO is maybe like one of the worst of the three, but EQO is still form. EQO is still sweet. They have some of the best. They can literally transplant their 2 worst DPS onto another team that's the low ones on NA and make those teams better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Their DPS number is really good. There's maybe who's going to play Tracer. King Carpe, if he focuses on Tracer, be that elite Tracer. I think he can be. I don't like them losing like a Hisu and a Fury and Ivy. Those are like 3 in Sato. Those are 4 really talented players to lose from your roster. I will say this though. I'm a big Mono fan. I know people are like a little bit down on him over last year, but this guy was like the number 1 tank in the world for the past few seasons. I think you put him in a new situation, new coaching staff, a new team to build around him. You give him a support line. Again, Ping, that's going to make or break this team a little bit. But Funny Astro Alarm is like the best support line in the league.
Funny Astro Alarm, man. I love
Funny Astro Alarm is the most elite support line. You also have Toby and Rascal and Hotbutt to come in there and hopefully replace and play if some Ping does become too bad. And those are really good players, right? Those are really good players to come in. It's short notice, but they're really good players. So I could see the world in which actually New York goes ahead of them. I could see a world in which they finish ahead of Seoul Dynasty, but this is just a tough team to really get a read on because of the ping issue. So if they get that figured out, their ceiling is still top 3, top 2 in my opinion.
Exactly. And Seoul Dynasty, that's our next one up.
Yeah.
What I really like about this team, obviously they for me they have a lot of that pop-up potential, just showing how big of a run they made last year in the grand finals. But for me, I'm really just seeing elite level chemistry here. We have the likes of Prophet and Jester who've been together pretty much since day one.
Yeah.
Like and like the amount of times I've seen rosters stay together for that long, or parts of rosters at least stay together from that long, is really unprecedented. So I feel like the Seoul is going to have, for me, what really kind of put them above Philly is the fact that they're having this level of chemistry along with the talent that you see there for such a long time.
Yeah, I think Seoul also brings a lot in terms of leadership, which is, again, potentially something they lacked last year. But I think the most important thing is last year they're running Marvel on off-tank, and they finally promoted full-time 2U. People don't know about 2U, but 2U is another insane off-tank talent coming out of Korean contenders. Again, I watched them and I looked at some nice old gameplay. That team saw the most success, I believe, when 2U was on it. This is another team. Again, you got Prophet, you got Fitz, who looked incredible during the playoffs. This is a team with a really high ceiling. Will they be able to find the consistency? I'm still not sure, but I think having an actual dedicated off-tank and a leadership figure like Seobi and maybe Onimo as well really helps that. Onimo, I'm not sure how much I love that addition. I don't know if he necessarily fits the potential ceilings of some of these teams. Onimo creative, I think, could be a little bit debatable, but I've still heard really good things about them. And again, at the end of the day, between 2U and their tank line and then Prophet and Fitz, I think this team is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the last one to touch on now is obviously our top, who's going to freaking guess? It's going to be the Shanghai Dragons. And just to give a little perspective from my side, I feel like when it rains, it pours in terms of a good thing here. It's look at, we have Fleta, and there's a reason why they call it the Fleta deadlift, right?
Yeah, he's MVP.
Because he carries so hard. And then obviously DM's great, but also you can't forget Lip. Lip had some really, really good pop-off times as more of a sub back last year, and he was clapping people as well. And Izzyaki, I can't say enough about how good and how impactful he is too. I really like those two. I feel like they're top 5 really in the league.
Void's still a really good off tank, and then even if you look at the new additions, right? Erster, when he was playing not last year but the year before, was almost an MVP candidate to round up this DPS lineup. That's absolutely insane. Again, Lip, DM, Erster, Fleta. You're talking about, again, an all-time great DPS lineup. The only thing I have to add is, again, you lose Fearless and Stanwell, but you get a guy like Fate in there. Fate was one of those people who was really underrated until he was almost finally accepted for what he is and the leadership that he brings to the table and the talent that he truly is. Fate over, my hot take could be that Fate actually could be an upgrade over Fearless. I think this team actually could have gotten better than they were last year. So Fate, Fate comes there, adds a little bit more leadership, maybe something they lacked, but I don't even know if that's true. Anyways, I don't have much more to say. This is the best team. I think most people are in agreement. They didn't really get any worse, and if anything, I think they got better.
Yeah, and honestly, they're almost up there for one of the best teams in the league. I can tell you right now when I was doing my calculations. We put them at a standard deviation of 0.6. So people were never rating them much higher than a 3. They're always 1 or 2 on everybody.
You mean lower than a 3? But yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree. I think they're a top 3 team for sure. So this is going to be a really exciting team to look out for when it goes to that combined land. Okay, let's move on to the NA. Yeah, let's move on to NA. Because if anyone's going to roast our APAC predictions, somewhat fine. To be fair, I don't watch a ton of Korean contenders. I don't watch a ton of APAC last year. This is mostly just from talking to people and giving my perceptions of the individuals. I'll be honest, I just can't stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning and watch those games. So if you want to roast them, roast ahead, that's fine. But NA is actually a little bit more interesting. Again, we're going to start off pretty cool here, but I have some interesting takes for NA. And there's a solid 5-team tier that's almost impossible to distinguish between, in my opinion. So we'll see. But that tier doesn't start yet.
Yeah, obviously at the bottom here, I got to put Vancouver Titans.
Yeah.
Guys, I feel you take out Shockwave and you throw in Tyrion Linkser.
Listen. Yeah, I don't know. There's arguably, again, we talked about this with the Iska. There's no bigger, I think, distance in the league potentially than Rolf at flex support and the rest of his competition. This team would have been a little bit better had they like waited until like, you know what I mean, to see truly who was available. I still think if you put like Adam in there in the off tank, if you put Sharp in there in the DPS lineup, you know, you're immediately looking better. If you put like Wub or Agilities in there in the flex DPS position, you're immediately looking better. And then you just need to figure out who can play sort of that flex support role. The good news is if they ever do want to take that route, like there are some pretty good talented NA players available. Like I'm really excited to see Adam in this league, and nothing against FRD. FRD could actually work out. He looked good in you know, when he was playing in season 2. But I'm a big Adam fan, so maybe they do make a change like that. But at this one, I don't see them finishing any higher than 20th.
Yeah, I understand that. So let's touch on the next two. I feel like for us, it's Paris and London.
Yeah.
For me, here's the thing for me. For Paris and London, we're looking at essentially, in the case of London, basically a full contenders team. In the case of Paris, you look at the cream of the crop from other contenders teams in EU.
Exactly.
For me, in NA, especially in NA, there is a massive skill gap in between, you know, the top OWL team and the bottom OWL teams. This is unlike, in my opinion, in Call of Duty League, where the top all the Call of Duty League teams, I'd say, are fairly close in skill level. And it's for that reason that if we're now going down to the contenders, past the OWL teams, they're taking even that extra step. So for me, like the skill level of especially EU contenders teams just isn't at quite the OWL level that I want it to be. It's not like more so like Call of Duty where you can there's a ton of AMs that are just really mixing it up. I feel like it's just less so on the OWL side.
It's tough. I don't fully disagree. Yeah, it's the best EU contenders versus the problem is like OWL upgraded too, right? So it's like how well do the best EU contenders players relate to the rest of the league, but also how well they relate to like the already established veterans. I actually think this team has some pretty good potential. Like I'm a big Paris fan. The problem is I think NA is like actually really good this year. I don't know if they'll outperform their performances of like 1918, but I think they'll be closer to being better than teams like London and, you know, Houston and Boston and Dallas than teams will give it credit for. Like I don't think they're going to get stomped on all year. I generally think that they will lose probably a lot, but I don't think they'll get like stomped on. It won't be like the Boston Uprising of last year where they like just weren't competitive. I think this team will be competitive. I think they got a really good DPS lineup, and Naga and Onigod and Suna. Like Naga and Onigod are really talented. I think people are sleeping on how talented those two individuals are, especially the ping is actually somewhat comparable. I've heard amazing things about Khan. Neptuno adds that like leadership that I think a team needs when you have like a young contenders team. Like having some, I think that's underrated. Having a true leader like Neptuno alongside like 5, 6, 7 rookies can really help bring them along. I think in terms of like how to play the game correctly and like that mentality, because Neptuno's been around the block and he's been on championship teams or contending teams, and I like the way this team's constructed. Don's a big question mark, but if he pulls off, I like Eliud a lot. Like this team has some like surprisingly high ceilings, not in terms of where they can place, but I think in terms of how competitive they can be. And then London's sort of the same thing. You get a guy like Shax in there who I think just really rounds out the DPS lineup, especially until Sparker's of age. Again, Sparker's incredibly talented, but he's again underage for the beginning of the season. Hybrid's got some potential. The tank line is obviously the shining, you know, gem of this team. That was the best tank line in EU contenders. I think they're going to come in and be a really like an above average tank line in the Overwatch. Like I think they are that good. For me, it's always been Ripa and Kellex in the DPS lineup. I don't know how they're going to perform for the rest of the DPS lineups. Again, I wasn't impressed with Kellex on Toronto Defiant last year. I watched a lot of his gameplay. Yeah. I know he went to EU contenders and they won there, but that was already an established core. Anyways, I don't see Kellex being one of the better main sports in this league. I think that will potentially hold him back. I think Ripa's good, but again, you're looking at flex supports in NA. Like, how does he compare to the rest of them? I think that support line will eventually hold them back as teams start to figure it together. They might start off hot because they are that established core. They have that established chemistry. But once you start to, like, once Dallas figures it out, once Houston figures it out, once Toronto figures it out, that's when things are going to get a little bit hairy. I've seen people put them ahead of Toronto. I don't think that will last. I think you're buying too much into the Scrimbucks there.
Yeah, I understand that. So I think next up we got like, hey, Dallas Fuel.
Yeah, Dallas Fuel. So I know, Chris, you want to talk. Listen, guys, before you go to the comments and absolutely roast us, Xe has retired by the time of us making this video, and we don't know who the replacement is. So, yeah, obviously they replace it. It won't happen, but if you got a striker in there or something, it changes a lot of things. This team already had a hole at not having a tracer player, and now they just straight up don't have a hit scan player. There was random rumors that it was Libero. And if the DPS lineup is Sparkle, Libero, Hanbin, I don't know, man. there's a lot of, I think, holes in that roster. So
Yeah,
I love the
Sparkle
tank line.
is-
I think actually a low-key hot take is I don't know how elite Fearless is going to be. I don't know if he is his top 3 main tank people make him out to be. I think his Monkey's top 3, but I don't know how his Orisa and how his Reinhardt are going to actually stack up to like the rest of the NA region. I think it could be a surprise, and the support line has question marks. In my opinion, this team was already coming down people's power rankings, and that was before Xe, who again maybe can't play the Tracer, but on the McCree and stuff like that could really pop off, retired. So I got to put him low. I was already, they were already coming down, and then one of their best players retires, in my opinion. That wasn't even, yeah. So, anyways,
honestly, can't forget Sparkle is an elite level Genji, but I feel like his hero pool is a little limited.
yeah, Genji Doomfist.
Yeah, it's a little limited. So I mean, in the era of hero pools, it's a little tough.
And he could probably figure it out. I think he's talented enough to figure it out. But it's just another question mark. That's the problem, right? It's another question mark. How is Fearless going to go to the rest of the main tanks if it's like a poke meta? A little bit of a question mark. Not a big one, but a little bit. How is Repel and Jexy going to perform this year? Can Fielder come back and prove himself to be that top tier flex support that some people think he is? Like another question mark. So, I mean, to be fair, a lot of these teams have question marks. I'm just Xe retiring. I think really hurts them, and I don't know who is replacing them. So I just can't put them higher. Obviously, they signed this. Who also? Sorry, I'm rambling. My last point for this team is I don't know who they're going to replace Xe with. That is the other issue because.
Said that.
But no, because of the COVID restrictions. That's the problem. I've seen some people on Reddit talk about Merit. I've seen some people talk about bring up some other really good names in Korean contenders who I think could potentially come in and actually replace and do really well. The problem with that is I don't know what the visa situation is going to be like. So when people are listing off all these names, they're all from Korean contenders. How many people can you get from NA contenders to I think step in and at that elite level?
Yeah,
that's my last point.
I understand that. Okay, next up, Houston. I think we got some really good tidbits from when we chatted with Yiska the other day with Happy being great. Before that, I was like, what's going on with this DPS line? Because we have Hydration used to be a tank. Jake, who's kind of a coach.
DPS, then a tank, then a DPS again.
Yeah, and then KSF, which I'm not too high on, and Dante, which has a couple good heroes, but I don't think he has the widest hero pool too.
I think Dante's good. I disagree. I think Dante's really good. But sorry, continue. I'm cutting you off. I think Dante's good.
Yeah, sorry. And now you're happy is a god, which is amazing to hear. But if I'm comparing this DPS line to some of the more established DPS lines, I feel like there's a lot of risks involved.
Kind of. I think Dante, for the heroes that he can play elite. He's a really good player, and he has a really interesting hero pool. I agree that KSF has some. KSF Hydration are some pretty big question marks. For me, the biggest question mark is again their support line. I'm a big Crimzo fan. I think Crimzo is extremely underrated. Juby, I know nothing about. And how is the support line going to last? And you could argue Crimzo is overrated. And do I overrate him because he's Canadian? Possibly. But I think Crimzo is underrated. So I think there's a lot of people who are unsure about how good Crimzo truly is. I'm a big Crimzo fan. But Juby, I don't know a ton about. The flex DPS players I'm a little bit unsure about. I actually like the tank line quite a bit. This is a team that it's in that tier where, dude, you can argue any of these teams are better than any of these teams, right? Again, Boston, Atlanta, Toronto, Houston, Dallas. Where do you rank those? I have generally no idea. It's really hard for me to tell the difference between these two teams. So many have so many question marks. All their ceilings are high, so I don't make it seem like I'm knocking this team just because they're this low. Happy's an absolute god. This tank line could absolutely work. Crimzo's underrated. And if Dante can play his hero pool and Juby actually ends up being a really good main support, all of a sudden this team is fits in NA, right? They have that potential. So that's my opinions on them. I know the scrimbarks are good. I just think there's a lot of risk and there's a low floor. I could see this team imploding, and that's why they're as low as they are.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, Buster Rising is our next one on the list. And this is interesting because, it's weird because they're leaders. The guys who've been there from the start, Fusions, Kalex. I'm really not high on those guys. I just Fusions look good in Goats, and that was it. Kalex has always been kind of the decent player for a bad team, Yeah. Kind of like the Logics of Toronto. A little bit. So it's a little interesting because those guys are kind of the leaders of this team. But I feel like they're the ones that kind of need to be almost pushed to the side to make way for your Valentines, for your hopefully IM37s, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting one where like I could see Fusions coming in and playing Reinhardt during a rush meta, but I agree. I could see a world in which Stanwin seriously plays the Orisa, plays the Monkey, and Fusions is their Rhine specialist, and they have like a Smurf super dynamic. I actually see that being a thing and actually working pretty well. Again, you have Punk in there who is a really good off tank, and then you have JBS awaiting in the wings in case he isn't as good as some people think he is. Right? You have like some low risk there, some pretty high ceilings between the two of them. I'm a big fan of the support line. Faith, Myungbong are elite in my opinion. That is again an elite support line in this league, and that goes a long way having like an elite aspect of your roster. I'm 37 Valentine could actually be a really sneaky above average DPS lineup. They're not in that elite tier, but they're really, I think Valentine could be elite. I'm 37 has something to prove because even Korean contenders, I think there was moments where he struggled a little bit, but when he can play his heroes, he's really good. Again, I'd love to see the bounce back performance from him being an original Toronto Defiant person. A extremely raw prospect and now has had a few years under his belt to properly learn like what it takes to be a competitor. This team's sneaky good. We said that before. I'll say it again. Especially if JBS goes into his lineup, who I'm also really high on, or if Punk just outperforms JBS, this is a sneaky good team. I know the Scrimbooks are really high on them now. I can't put them ahead of the other two teams because, one, I'm Canadian, and then two, they just have a little bit more question marks. There's just a little bit more question marks with this team where maybe Stanwood isn't as good as I think he is. You know what I mean? Maybe like they do try to run fusions more than they should. And then all of a sudden, maybe Punk is a little bit overrated and JBS isn't as good as I think he is. You know what I mean? There's some more question marks here, so that's why they're as low as they are. But this team is sneaky good. They have another like really high ceiling.
Yeah, I agree. Now, so the next two we kind of debate over a little bit. Atlanta Reign, Toronto Defiant. We're putting Toronto Defiant ahead of Atlanta Reign because we're kind of sipping the Toronto Defiant Kool-Aid and ignoring Scrimbucks. Ignore the Scrimbucks having us third last. So let's talk about Atlanta Reign. Let's not deny the fact that they probably have an elite level DPS line with Edison and Pelican. I'd say
KSP, as well.
Sorry.
Oh, so don't forget about KSP as well.
Yeah, and KSP. Yeah. But I'd say that their tank line with Gator and Hawk, they're really highly regarded last year, but didn't perform as well as I think everybody was expecting.
So I agree. That's probably the biggest question mark of this roster. There's a few things. One, I think that this is probably the best DPS lineup in the league. At least it's right there. Two, I think their support line has like been upgraded and people aren't talking about it. I'm an Iris fan, and I think that having him in this team full time actually could potentially upgrade that position. And again, it's a narrative that isn't really being spoken about. Everybody's talking about the DPS for a good reason. I think Gator performed pretty well. I think Hawk had some like inconsistencies. I think he had some decently high ceilings, but some like relatively low floors. This is a team where, again, another year under their belts, a little bit better on DPS lineup, a little bit better support lineup. Can that help the tank line improve? That's usually the case. My last point is like, again, I've mentioned this before, but if you need a Western off tank, there's a guy, Adam, waiting in the wings who's ready to come in at a moment's notice and I think improve this position. So I think, like, again, if Hawk does struggle, you could throw Adam in there, and then I feel like even a little bit better about this team. So their DPS lineup is so good. Their firepower is so elite, and that's why I have them ahead of Boston and Houston and Dallas, to be honest. Yeah. Because if I actually looked about which part of the team is most elite relative to their competition, it's Atlanta's DPS lineup, where I think it's actually in that S+ tier alongside the Shocks and the Justice and the Gladiators, right? Like it's in that tier of like elite talent.
Yeah.
That's actually why I actually had them ahead of Toronto, but I think both Chris and I sat down and we're like, hey, screw it. We're from Toronto. We're a Toronto podcast. Let's put Toronto ahead of them. And that's the only reason that really they're behind. But no, I am pretty high on this team.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, Toronto, fine. And here's one of the reasons why I put them higher than our counterparts at Atlanta. I think one of the big things for me is that they really, in my opinion, have a leader in every single department, right? They have Hisu on DPS. They have Sato on tank. They have Lastro on support. These are all players that have a lot of great experience, and I feel like can really help guide some of the newer additions in order to kind of help them get up to speed. Now, a little bit concerned about, how team chemistry is going to go, how everything's going to be mixing, especially when we have the likes of Beast and Logic. So Beast probably isn't going to start, but there's a genuine chance that Logic does start. And there are some question marks, in my opinion, with people like possibly SMJ and Neist, and Michelle as well. So
There's so many question marks.
couple of question marks.
Yeah, there's some question marks with like their rookie support lineup, and then also they're like their their only flex CPS player, and then also their only off tank.
Yeah,
I feel good about Sato, Hisu, Lashro.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of question marks there, but KDG, the man worked some magic in Philly, but he had a great team to work magic with. So this is going to be a big test.
Yeah.
KDG we trust.
I think Sato is a really good main tank. I think, again, having a good main tank is a really good place to sort of build your foundation around. Hisu, I think, is a really good DPS player. Lasho is an elite flex support player. So I agree with you. I don't know about like leadership. Like again, Hisu's like 19 years old. Lasho's again pretty new into the league. But you gotta go like Logic's in there who's been around the block. You gotta go like Sato who's been around the block. You have an experienced coach like KDG. I do think there's something to be said about bringing in this young talent, but surrounding them with veteran pieces. That's one of the reasons why I put these two teams. That's actually not a good point. I think a few other teams have done that, but still, I think there's something to be said about doing that, because I think that's a good way for success. Yeah, I think for me, Nice concerns me a lot, to be honest, even more than Michelle, because I've seen Michelle at least perform at the Overwatch League level. I haven't seen Nice. In my opinion, Nice screams, Flower, he screams, "Who are you?" Like these sort of characters who are really hyped up, but then kind of fell off that hype, closer to when they made their appearance, and then when they did make their appearance, they underperformed. But he was picked up for a reason, right? He was picked up over Valentine. He was picked up over Assassin. Maybe KDG saw something that we don't know about. He's always had a really high ceiling, and if he can reach that ceiling, this team's dangerous. Like they just are. I think Lastro, I think that's a really good like support line, and their depth is like a little bit under talked about. That's a support line that, regardless of heal pools, should be able to perform. If this ever is a double flex support meta, they should look better. If it's a double main tank meta, they should look better. They actually have a second main tank in Beast. Again, will Beast see some playtime? Probably not.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little tougher.
I just like the ceiling of some like players on the team. I'm a huge TCU fan. I'm a huge Sato fan. At some point, man, I'm drinking a little bit of the Kool-Aid. Like it's hard to, I think, fully justify why they're ahead of the rain, other than I'm a Canadian and I think they have a better tank line.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're going to move on to Florida Mayhem and chat a little bit more about that. I think that there's a clear tier break here.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. It's okay.
There's a clear tier break here, and actually, when I was writing the numbers, we had Toronto sitting at roughly about a 10.7 average, and then all the way drops down to Florida at 7.7. So we're seeing almost about a 3-point difference here, or quote unquote 3 position difference.
Yeah.
So for me, there is a big difference. I really like the fact that we're going to be seeing some chemistry with the coaching staff. With Kuki, Insight, and Docs, they've been spending a lot of time together, and so I'm guessing they have a really good system set up. And they basically took Mayhem and made them a lot better in the last couple of seasons. So yeah. I feel like they can probably do some good stuff, especially with people like OGE. Like I feel like OGE was a little bit underrated last year. He didn't do too well in LAG, but I feel like that may have been more of a team chemistry. I think now with a purely Korean roster, he probably has a better chance of working well with them.
I will say, I'll buy the Slime stonks. You know what I mean? People are talking like Slime some scrubs. Slime was one of the best main sports in the league when he was playing with the Vancouver Titans. He's been around the block for a long time. I think he comes there and absolutely upgrades over Chris. I think him and Gundam Gen's an elite support line. I don't know what Checkmate brings to this team, but if he's as good as people say he is, and I do kind of trust the scouting of the Florida Mayhem, they've obviously put together a really good team. And some really I don't want to say hidden gems, but like again, Gargoyle wasn't super highly regarded when he first came into the league. And I think he's now considered one of the better main tanks in the NA region. So I trust their scouting. BQB and Yaki are a really solid, good support line. The big question mark is, can OGE perform and replace and upgrade over Fate? And if that's the case, this is a really good team. I also think there's something to be said about keeping a core together over a long period of time and like building in that chemistry. Like they kept together the core and they sort of just added in a few new pieces here and there. I'm excited to see how it works. The coaching staff, I think, is elite. In my opinion, it's a safe bet to, again, finish in the top 5 position. So I'm hoping OGE figures it out, but I'm buying the Slime Stonks. I think that's going to be one of the better support lines in this region. I think that's one of the reasons why they're going to succeed.
I agree. And now I think we're getting to our top 3. I feel like there's another little bit of
for sure
a tier break here, and when we kind of approach this. So I feel like, I'm not going to give our next 2 because I feel like I'll give away our number 1, which is going to be completely obvious. But I think number 3 is going to be, I believe, the Washington Justice for me.
Yes. You say I'll give our next 2, and then you're saying for me. But for me, it's the Gladiators.
Yeah, we're fucking
giving it away. And number 1. Yeah, listen, a lot of people are actually putting LA Gladiators number 1. I think there's some debate over will they be able to win more regular season games than the San Francisco Shock and the Justice. Sure, I know that scrimbucks are a thing. I think Washington just has more firepower, and I think San Francisco Shock just has too good of a core, and Krusty's too good of a coach. I think that if you look at the coaching staff, I have more concerns about Depe in relation, right? I'm not saying he's a bad coach, just in relation to maybe being able to build a championship caliber team. I think that there are some question marks surrounding that DPS, and debatably that tank line. I think Muse is good, but I think some people are overrating how elite Muse potentially is. I think Space is really good too, but is he going to be this elite off tank among, again, your Choyobins of the world, right? You're going up against Fury. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to go. I think Kevster is really good, but Birdring's always been a little bit hit and miss, right? He's a little bbit streaky. When he's on, he's one of the best in the league, but he's not always on. I think there's question marks surrounding Mirror. The saving grace for this team is that support line. In terms of just like a Lucio flex support meta, I think that is the best support line in the league. Debatably, but I'm really high on that support line. I think Shu is extremely underrated. I'll buy all the Shu stonks as well. But I think that there's some question marks on this team that people are just throwing away because scrimbucks are good. I'm still don't know if I'm ready to put them ahead. I'm definitely not ready to put them ahead of the Shock. And personally, I'm buying all the Justice stonks. They are my hot take of the year, the team that's being overlooked the most, and I'll rank them in a bit. But that's sort of why I put the Gladiators at number 3.
I picking up what you're putting down here right now. For me, yeah, you know what? That just happened. I'm putting a little bit of scrimbucks into this too.
That's fair.
And, yeah, scrim stonks go higher, right?
Does.
Yeah, but honestly, for me, I really like Space and Muse. I know Space. Some people think he's low rated. I don't think he's overrated. I think he is a really great person. I know, when it comes to the Washington Justice, and I'm comparing their DPS line, I feel like the DPS line of the Washington Justice with Decay and Assassin could be a little bit better, but we just don't really know what Assassin's going to look like.
I'm high on Assassin.
Yeah, you're high on Assassin, but I could. I mean, they still have Jerry, which is a decent for Boston Uprising last year. But they're really close for me too, right? I just feel like I trust in Birdring, Mira, Moth, Space.
In my opinion, and this is why my rants here. I think the firepower of the Justice is the best. When those 4 are on of Decay, Assassin, Fury, Meg, I don't think there's any better 4 in terms of the top 2 DPS and the top 2 tanks. Again, maybe outside of the Shock. That is an extremely elite core 4. Elite. I think that tank line is noticeably better than the Gladiators. I think Meg is better than Muse. I think Fury is better than Space. And I think Decay, we saw what he did. He single-handedly carried the Justice to a top 3 finish last year. Now he's got Meg, Fury, and Assassin alongside him. Man, the things that he can do. When you saw him play with Stitch and John, and there's no disrespect to them, there's good players. But I think Fury, Meg, and Assassin are just on another level. With Jerry in there as well, he should always be able to play Decay. He should be comfortable. He should be playing the carry role regardless of the meta. Meg is a superstar in the making, right? He's been the most talked about main tank for 2 years now. He can play all the roles aside from maybe the ball. That's the only thing that I think could maybe hurt this team if there's a ball meta, but we'll see. People obviously talk about the support line. I still think they're good players, and they don't need to be elite. They just need to be able to play their positioning. And again, give the resources to the players who can carry this map, this will be a team that maybe will struggle a little bit. And by struggle, I mean like 5, right? Top 5 earlier on in the year. But if they can figure it out, in my opinion, if any team is going to dethrone the Shock, it's not the Gladiators, it's the Justice. I might eat those words. It might be the Gladiators. Obviously, I have them at 3. I'm not like disrespecting them. I'm just really high on the Justice. I'm buying all the stonks, whatever price you want to sell them, because I'm really high on this team.
Yeah. You know what? I think a lot of it comes down to like, what do we value more, and what's going to be more important, like DPS or something like support. So I feel like LA Gladiators, if support's like, becomes more important, LA Gladiators are going to be a little bit higher.
Yeah.
If we're looking at DPS, it's going to be more towards the Justice. But I mean, one last one to talk on in San Francisco. I believe people beat this to death. Yeah. So I'm going to mention something that I feel like is a little bit of right now, a little bit of a question mark for me. And that's going to be Krusty's support staff, with Agape and Kasource. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Kasource used to coach Young and Beautiful before, and Agape is on the London Spitfire. So I feel like there's a couple question marks around those guys, but that's really the only like very small, tiny hole that I'm seeing. I know we know Krusty's a really, really good coach for player coach, but can he also orchestrate these assistant coaches in a way that gets them good?
The team's too good. They have too good of a coach, I think, to not be number one. Smurf.
No, I know.
No, I know. I'm not just because people aren't putting the number one. Smurf, Choi, Oben, Super. Any meta, any tank combination, you're set.
D-God.
FD God, Twilight, Violet. That's insane. Like, that's unfair. In a double flex support meta, Twilight, Violet are like, I think you could argue Twilight's better than Violet. And Violet's probably the best flex support in the league, right? Like, obviously not as Zen, but maybe as an overall flex support. That's insane. That's not fair. And then if it is a Lucio meta, you put FD God in there. Like, that's generally not fair. The only thing that maybe hurts this team is who plays Mercy. FD God's Mercy wasn't as good as his Lucio, but I think the kid's talented enough to figure it out. And then their DPS is Striker, who was arguably their MVP last year. Nero, who I think has some untapped potential. Glister, who I know has some untapped potential. That guy's an absolute stud. And then Tayo, who again was a really, really highly touted player. And unfortunately is probably playing the 4 string on this DPS on it. But man, I've seen people put them at 2, put them at 3. And I don't know if you're just buying into the fact that, like, well, San Francisco, yeah, they've always won the league, but they've never finished first. And maybe you're just talking about regular standings, but they were always the best team in my opinion, and they're still the best team. And I just don't see anyone changing that. So maybe we're wrong, and they won't go for the 3-peat. But again,
but if we are wrong,
Krusty, like,
yeah. And hey guys, if we are wrong, let us know. Go into the comments below. Let us know why we're wrong, and we'll freaking debate you till the cows come home. I mean, yeah. So hey, with that, guys, if you like what you guys are hearing, please like and subscribe to the main Esports. We make a lot of content here, and we are still making some content on our own channels as well.
Yep,
so make sure we're doing that. Yeah.
By the way, guys, thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts below, and as always, enjoy.